But we begin in the United States, where senators have passed a bill investing billions in American technology and innovation. It's aimed at countering China. Our correspondent Kate Fisher has more now from Washington.
This is a huge bill in terms of the amount of money we're talking about. It authorizes $190 billion to be spent on strengthening U.S. technology and research, $54 billion going to semiconductors and telecommunications, with $2 billion specifically dedicated to those chips that auto manufacturers need so much because they are in such a shortage here in the US right now. There was a rare moment of accord in the US Senate. This vote was 68-32 in favor, reflecting this kind of bipartisan feeling of a need that they need to counter China's rise. It does, however, have to pass the House of Representatives before it ends up on the president's desk to be signed into law. And we understand that it may not be quite as welcome once it reaches the House of Representatives. It also opens the door for new sanctions to target Beijing over human rights practices. It commissions a new study into the origins of the coronavirus. It calls for a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. And it also puts hundreds of millions of dollars into countering the political influence of the Chinese Communist Party. So this is wide-ranging, and the US committing to spending a lot of money on this.
And earlier I spoke to Nina Xiong with the investment news service China Money Network about whether the bill would accelerate decoupling between the world's two largest economies.
Well, actually, this bill represents a big positive for U.S.-China tech relationship, because the main idea is about investing in U.S. technology in order to compete with China. There are still elements about blocking China's rise, but it's already an improvement from the past, when the U.S. strategy was really about trying to sink China's boat. So this bill sets a tone that the U.S. and China will each invest heavily in their own technology, and they will compete in the marketplace, and they won't engage in behavior aimed only at hurting each other.
But
so
don't you think that's going to drive the two economies further apart?
Well, actually, I don't think this bill is going to accelerate the decoupling process, because that has already started from the past, from previous U.S. actions. But also, overall, I don't think the U.S. and China can actually have a complete decoupling. The most likely scenario is there will be partial decoupling in certain sectors like semiconductor, but the two countries would still be quite engaged with each other in many other sectors.
Well, let's continue this conversation with current affairs commentator Einar Tangen, who joins us now in the studio. Einar, good to see you with us on the show. So, obviously this bill enjoys wide bipartisan support within the United States. There has been some limited criticism from some lawmakers over the fact that this money, they allege, will have no strings attached, that maybe the government should not be investing so heavily in these industries. Is the criticism fair, and is it enough to derail this bill?
No, it's not enough to derail the bill, but there's certainly a tremendous amount of pork and corporate welfare that's involved here. I mean, it's the only vehicle in town in which you can sail through Congress on both houses and through the presidency. So everybody loaded up their favorite programs and off to the White House they go.
So if this is passed, we're talking a lot of money here, $200 billion. How much of an impact do you think that's going to have on American innovation, and how much of an impact do you think that's going to have on China?
Well, it's not going to have a direct effect. I mean, what you're talking about here are science center support for this, support for that, STEM programs. It's not going to make a big difference in the next couple of years. It could make a difference 5-6 years from now as graduates come forward, as research comes out of these facilities. But right now, what you alluded to earlier, there's no specific deliverables. They often say, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. So at this juncture, there are really no deliverables. It is just a huge amount of money that's being tossed at a problem based on the idea that this is going to somehow combat China. In terms of China, it doesn't really change anything. The trust has been lost. You're not going to see complete decoupling, but in strategic areas, especially chips and technology, high tech, you are going to see a lot of decoupling.
All right, Einar Tangen, thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it. Well, the U.S. Senate has also issued a new report highlighting the intelligence failures leading up to the Capitol riot earlier this year. The 100-page report says intelligence agencies ignored multiple warnings and that the Capitol Police were left unprepared and additional security forces arrived too late. In January, supporters of former President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol in a bid to stop Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory. Trump was acquitted by the Senate in his second impeachment trial, accused of inciting the violence. It left 5 people dead, including a police officer.